Next, we're going to talk about the law of conservation of energy, which says simply that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it simply will be converted from one form to another. So we've kind of already been talking about these in our examples here, but the basic idea is that as energy transforms from one form to another, you're not gaining or losing the total amount of energy, you're simply transforming it from one form to another. So as this pendulum swings, it goes back and forth between potential and kinetic energy. Here's another example. A bullet fired from a gun will have a lot of kinetic energy as it's initially fired, and it will gain potential energy as it gets higher off the ground. And then as it falls back to the ground, it will gain more kinetic. Here's another example asking us to look at these 5 positions and rate them in terms of potential and kinetic energy. First, if we look at kinetic energy, the lowest points are going to be the fastest, and E looks to me to be the lowest point, and so that will be the fastest, and then B, and then D, C, and A. And again, I'm basically just arranging these in terms of lowest, which would have the fastest speed, to highest, which would be the slowest speed. Potential energy is simply going to be the opposite of kinetic. The most potential is going to be the least kinetic, and that's the point where it's highest off the ground. And conversely, wherever it had the most kinetic, it will have the least potential, and it will be exactly opposite. When people talk about conserving energy, really what they're worrying about is conserving forms of energy that are easy to use. For example, fossil fuels. The law of conservation of energy says we don't truly run out of energy, but we certainly can run out of forms of stored energy like fossil fuels. Fossil fuels took millions of years to accumulate, much longer than it's taking us to use them. So when we say we need to conserve energy, we're saying we need to worry about the forms of energy and how easily available they are to us. So for example, using more energy efficient light bulbs is one way to conserve energy, because really it's not about how much energy you use, it's where that energy came from. And if you're using a lot of energy, that means a lot of fossil fuels need to be burned to create that energy. One way to conserve those unrenewable forms of energy is to use renewable forms instead, like solar, wind, thermal, etc. And finally, here's a little graph that shows you where electricity in our area comes from. You can see that most of our energy is from fossil fuels, and this is actually not as high as many parts of the country because we live very close to a nuclear power plant, so that's why our nuclear is so high.